A tragic, almost Byzantine mystery that began in Chicago 49 years ago tomorrow has latched onto a local family and just won't let go.
Imagine discovering that the identity you've had your entire life isn't real, that the family which raised you isn't your family at all, and that you don't even know your real name.
Well, that's a case that began with a sensational kidnapping in the Midwest, but has now spread to Southern Nevada and to the I-Team. George Knapp here with this exclusive story.
You ever had that feeling when you were a kid that you must have been switched at birth or something, or that aliens had dropped you off because you couldn't possibly belong to your own family? Well, for Paul Joseph Fronczak of Henderson, it's more than a fuzzy feeling. Tomorrow is supposed to be his birthday, but he's just recently learned that he has no idea when he was actually born, that his parents aren't really his parents, and that he hasn't a clue where he's from or who he is. It started with a kidnapping that exploded onto an international stage, and it's one amazing, puzzling tale.
I don't even know how old I am, or who I am, or what nationality, all those things that you just take for granted.
Paul Fronzak has had two identities in his 49 years, but neither are his own. His first namesake was born April 26, 1964, at Chicago's Michael Reese Hospital, the son of Chester and Dora Fronczak. One day later, a woman dressed as a nurse walked into the mother's hospital room and said the baby needed to be examined by a doctor. Dora handed him over.
7 hours later, a doctor comes in to check on her baby. And she's like, "You guys have my baby." And he's like, "No, we don't."
A frantic, desperate manhunt was launched by police. Witnesses say the middle-aged woman had walked out the back of the hospital, hopped into a cab, and drove away with the baby. Police went door to door in the neighborhood, circulated artist sketches, interrogated and released 6 different suspects. The story exploded onto the national stage. 175,000 letter carriers joined the search, as did the FBI. Agents examined 10,000 babies, interviewed 3 times that many witnesses. The kidnapping became an international sensation. The heartbroken Fronczaks were hounded by media.
It was huge. My parents have letters from the Pope, letters from people from all over the country. It was a huge case. And my parents got really frustrated because they'd have reporters hanging outside their windows, climbing telephone poles, taking pictures of them when they were at church, just following them all over the place.
Phony kidnappers tried to extort money from the Fronczaks and were arrested, but the baby was never found. 2.5 years later, a boy in a stroller was abandoned outside a store in Newark, New Jersey. Child welfare authorities named him Scott McKinley. FBI agents examined him at the orphanage, looked at his skin, bones, blood, and his ears.
The FBI decided that because my ears matched the Fronczak baby, that I was probably the Fronczak baby.
Mrs. Fronczak took one look and said, "That's my baby." "It's Paul," newspapers declared, though police admitted they still had doubts. The Fronczaks adopted Scott McKinley, renamed him, and returned him to a loving family in Chicago. The boy in those home movies was happy and healthy. Paul says he had no idea about the kidnapping until years later when he found a box of newspaper clippings. Even then, his parents didn't tell him much. As he grew older, though, he began to suspect he didn't quite belong. He was different, didn't look like his Polish-Croatian parents, but was never able to get any solid answers from them until just recently.
I'll tell you that when she was born in the hospital, I didn't let her leave my side once.
For most of his life, he's been Paul Joseph Fronczak, but now, living in Henderson with wife Michelle and daughter Emma, the need to know for sure has grown more imperative.
You know, she knows my side of the family, but we don't know anything about his parents and health issues or anything like that, so.
Did he tell you this story sort of in the beginning when you're first maybe
Yeah, I
going
think
out
we had
together?
gone on about 5 or 10 dates.
It's a great line, George. It always works.
I thought he was
Yeah, I was
crazy.
kidding.
I really thought he was crazy. I was just telling my coworkers today, I thought, this is a lifetime story. This can't be true.
But Paul showed her the old news clippings. Last year, while his parents were visiting from Chicago, Paul decided to do something. He bought a DNA kit at a drugstore.
And I said, "Hey, by the way, have you guys ever really thought if I was yours?" You know, kind of making a joke of it, you know? They're like, "Yeah, we thought about it." I'm like, "Hold on." I went and got the DNA kit, brought it out, and 5 minutes later, we're swabbing away.
A week later, a DNA technician told him the stunning news.
There's no remote possibility that you are the Fronczak baby. And I was like, wow.
He told the I-Team his story, but has not been able to bring himself to tell his parents.
Lucky. He's so lucky that he was adopted by the Fronczaks. You know, because who knows what life he could have had.
You haven't told him yet?
Yeah, I haven't told them. I want to do it right. There's no do-overs in this one.
Like I said, as a mother, I think it's going to be very difficult. Very difficult. My heart goes out to them.
That's.
But it's important to him. And it's important for our family.
And the whole thing is, it's just, it's not just about them anymore, just about me. It's about, is their real son still alive? Is he out there? Hopefully this story can help us find out.
This isn't just one mystery, it's several. What became of the real Paul Fronzak, not to mention his kidnapper? Why was that baby abandoned outside a store in Newark? What's the real name, age, and nationality of the guy living out there in Henderson? And where's his other family? When the I-Team started working on this story weeks ago, Paul had not yet informed the Fronzaks about the results of the DNA test. But his parents have now been told the hard truth. Tonight at 11, we'll have that part of the story. We put together a special web page which contains everything we could find on this case in hopes the public might help us solve these mysteries and assist Paul in learning who he really is. And we hope you will add your input and ideas because we're in this for the long haul. So you can go to our website, use the keyword mystery, and see it all laid out there.
Let's hope we can solve it.
Yeah, can't wait to see the 11 o'clock.
Well, we'll have lots of updates if there's progress. We'll certainly let people know.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, George.
A mystery that began 49 years ago tomorrow is causing new heartache for one Henderson family. It started with the kidnapping of a one-day-old baby from a Chicago hospital back in April 1964.
And the kidnapper was never caught, but 2 years later, an infant was found in New Jersey and was assumed to be that kidnap victim. The baby, Paul Joseph Fronczak, is now a grown man, lives in Henderson, recently learned through DNA testing that he is not a Fronczak after all, and he struggled with the idea of telling his parents the news. I-Team's George Knapp continues this exclusive story.
In our attempts to help Paul Fronzak find out who he really is, the I-Team has contacted public agencies in Illinois and New Jersey to find out what records they might have which could unravel this perplexing mystery. So far, agencies in both states have been either unable or unwilling to provide even a single document. Our request for the FBI file on the kidnapping case could take years to get. In the meantime, Fronczak is doing what he can to fill in some of the missing pieces of his life.
Right, you ready, Em?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to do this.
What is that?
This is a DNA kit.
A Band-Aid?
Kind of.
For nearly all of his 49 years, he's been Paul Fronzak, but a home DNA test recently revealed that he's a Fronzak in name only. A second, more extensive DNA test could help him find out a lot more about his own history. It's as much for his daughter and wife as for his own peace of mind. But Paul is worried about how the news will be received by the kindly couple who raised him.
I was like, you really don't need to know that. You're our son.
As far as they're concerned, you still are. I mean, you always will be.
Absolutely. And they're great parents. But I'd like to really...
Scan through the hours of old family movies and it's clear the parents, Chester and Dora Fronczak, provided a loving family life for the boy who was stolen from them, then miraculously returned. Christmases, birthdays, family vacations. And it's because they were such good parents that telling them about the DNA test is going to be so hard.
You haven't told them yet, though.
No, I haven't. I'm going to. My dad's 82, my mom's 80 or 79. And, but I feel like even though it's probably going to throw them for a loop, I really think that they're going to be happy to know, because they had to be thinking about this their whole lives.
The story reads like a movie script. One day after Paul was born in a Chicago hospital, a woman dressed as a nurse kidnapped him and was never seen again, despite a massive nationwide manhunt and FBI investigation. 2.5 years later, a youngster was found abandoned outside a store in Newark. This was before DNA testing existed, so authorities took an educated guess that maybe the boy in New Jersey was the missing Fronczak baby.
And I started thinking, honestly, what are the chances that out of a kidnapped baby from Chicago, that I am their kidnapped child found in New Jersey 2.5 years later? It's pretty wild.
Because there wasn't proof positive, the Fronczaks had to adopt the boy they believed to be their own son. They raised him well, but never wanted to talk about it again.
And if we can get an answer for them, that'd be the best gift I could give them. I mean, it's a sad thing to tell them, but it could be a great thing in the end.
Paul decided that a phone call simply wouldn't do.
Dear Mom and Dad,
so he wrote an impassioned letter to explain why he's pursuing the truth.
I've been struggling with the fact that I want to know if the real Fronczak baby is still alive and what happened. I also want to find out who I am and why I was abandoned at a variety store in Newark, New Jersey back in 1965.
The reaction to his letter was not good. Paul says his dad called but didn't say anything about the substance of the letter. Instead, he was angry that the Fronczaks might once again become the focus of a media frenzy.
It didn't go quite the way I was hoping it would go.
They didn't really react to what's in the letter, though, did they?
No, the only thing that is really has my parents concerned is reporters, because they had a really bad experience back in '64, reporters sleeping on their lawn.
Paul hopes his parents will adjust to the idea once it sinks in, and he hopes the public can help him find out who he is and why he was abandoned. It's important for his wife and daughter to know, too.
I will tell you that when she was born in the hospital, I didn't let her leave my side once. Not at all.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care how many credentials were flashed in my face. Right? Right, Emma?
They'll still be your parents.
Always my parents. Great people raised me the way I am today. I just think it'd be really cool if we actually found the real kidnapped baby.
A Henderson man is fighting to find out who he is after a lifetime thinking he was someone else.
The strange tale of Paul Joseph Fronczak was first revealed by the I-Team last month. For most of his life, he believed he'd been kidnapped as a baby, then rightfully returned to his parents a year later. But a recent DNA test proved that Fronczak is not related to the family he grew up with, which means he doesn't really know much about himself. But there's been a change and some new leads. George Knapp has an exclusive update to this real-life mystery.
The DNA test results came back, and it turns out I am not your biological son. I am not the kidnapped baby that you had stolen from your arms on April 27, 1964.
The gut-wrenching letter sent by Paul Fronzak to the loving couple that have been his parents for more than 40 years was not well received. Dora and Chester Fronczak were stunned. The father was angry, but Paul hoped they would digest the shocking news and change their minds. They did.
I wanted to call them every day, but I didn't. I wanted them to, settle a little bit, and then I finally called. And it was a great conversation.
The Fronczaks agreed to do whatever they can to help Paul figure out who he is, so long as they don't have to talk to any reporters. They got their fill of paparazzi back in the 60s when their story became an international sensation. A woman walked into a Chicago hospital dressed as a nurse and walked out with their newborn baby. Police and FBI launched a nationwide search for the baby and the kidnapper. Thousands of suspects were investigated. Thousands of babies were examined. The Fronczaks were heartbroken. More than a year later, in Newark, New Jersey, an infant was found abandoned outside a store. The FBI began a series of tests on the boy, who was given the name Scott McKinley by child welfare officials. After a year of being moved around within the foster care system, Scott was adopted by the Fronczaks, who believed he was their missing son. They were great parents, Paul says, and he grew up in a wonderful family, but always felt something was amiss.
Right, you ready, Em? I'm going to do this.
These days, Paul lives in Henderson with his own family, but the unanswered questions still rattle around in his head. So a few months ago, almost as a lark, he talked his visiting parents into giving a few swabs for a home DNA test and sent off for the results. The test confirmed he is not their son, which means he has no idea who he really is, his name, where his blood relatives are, or the reason he was abandoned.
I'd like to know who I am, my birthday, how old I am. But more importantly, is the real Fronczak baby still alive? Is it out there? And if it is, can we find it? Can we actually reunite it with my mom and dad?
Since our stories about his unusual case aired last month, ideas and suggestions have poured in from the public to the webpage devoted to his mystery. A second, more extensive DNA test was conducted, but the results are not yet complete. And the case came to the attention of Ancestry.com, an online DNA and genealogy site with a gigantic database.
With billions of records and millions of family trees.
Experts there agreed to administer a third test.
It's a beta test that checks for 700,000 markers, and I had to felt like a gallon, but it was just a vial of DNA spit. And
Ancestry.com has told Paul if he has any blood relatives left alive, they're going to find them.
What have they told you about how optimistic they are?
Oh, they're 100% into it. They're like, these markers will get it down to at least a third or fourth cousin. in my real family, as long, and also finding my surname, the family name.
In the meantime, the I-Team, assisted by our affiliate in New York, has filled in some of the blanks about Scott McKinley, the boy abandoned in Newark. On the day he was left in a stroller on a sidewalk, someone called Newark police with a tip about the baby. The variety store where he was left thrived for many years, but went out of business in the 70s. We tracked down the nurse who was photographed with Scott in a snapshot that was seen all over the country, but she died 6 years ago. The caseworker in charge of Scott's time in the foster system is now in her 80s and doesn't remember him. And the city of Newark, which presumably has records which could shed light on the mystery, has been unable, but mostly unwilling, to dig into its files. But progress has been made, and chances are good the New Jersey part of the mystery is going to be solved.
So my bag's packed. I'm ready to go to Jersey. I mean, whatever it takes.
The Chicago mystery is tougher to crack. What became of the Fronczak baby and the kidnapper? But Paul is optimistic.
Hopefully someone's going to come forward, and the more light we shine on this case, the more we have a chance of finding something. I don't know why. I have this feeling that the Fronczak baby is still alive.
A multi-level mystery that exploded into an international media sensation nearly half a century ago is big news once again.
The I-Team first told you about the story of Henderson resident Paul Fronzak earlier this year. A DNA test taken by him and his parents revealed he is not the person he thought himself to be.
8 News now launched an investigation to help Paul find out who he really is and what might have happened to his namesake, a baby kidnapped in 1954, rather 64. George Knapp here with an update on that.
The story is percolating on several levels now. We told Paul Fronzak from the beginning, assured him that his story would make national news once the initial reports received broader exposure. It took a while, but that's exactly what has happened. Our phones have been exploding with calls from other media outfits who want to interview him or join the investigation. But there are 2 other developments that might be even more promising in the long run, as Paul struggles to mend fences with the loving couple who raised him. For the last few weeks, it's been tough to speak to his father and mother.
She basically, what she said was that if they don't talk about it, it never happened. And that's the feeling I'm getting, that she really doesn't want to bring it up because then she has to really admit that it was real.
Henderson resident Paul Fronzak is in a delicate spot with the Chicago couple he still thinks of as his parents, even though a DNA test conducted months ago proved beyond any doubt that he is not the biological son of Chester and Dora Fronczak. Their baby was kidnapped from a Chicago hospital one day after it was born back in 1964. The kidnapper, a woman dressed as a nurse, and the Fronczak baby vanished despite a nationwide manhunt and an international media frenzy. When Paul broke the news about the DNA results to his parents earlier this year, they didn't take it well, even though he believes they have known on some level ever since 1966, when he was adopted by the Fronczaks after being found abandoned on a street in Newark, New Jersey. Since the initial shock wore off, he's had conversations with his parents, though they have largely avoided the elephant in the room.
We're not talking about the case at all. Right. You know, it's just the niceties, how are things in Chicago, stuff like that, you know.
But on other fronts, things are moving fast. The story of the Fronczak kidnapping is once again big news. The initial stories by the I-Team have been picked up by national networks, big city newspapers, and even foreign media, including TV outfits in Japan, Australia, and Europe. The web page we created for Paul is abuzz with ideas and input from the public. Paul has submitted to additional DNA tests to help track down his genetic heritage for clues about his birth family, the family that, for unknown reasons, abandoned him in Newark in 1965. The results from a simple initial DNA test are now in and proved disappointing. The analysis by a company called Ancestry by DNA took more than 10 weeks to obtain and revealed that genetically, Paul is 94% European. One look at his face could have told us the same thing. But 2 much more extensive DNA tests followed. The results are not yet in, but Paul has been assured these tests should be able to find any living blood relatives he might have. One other promising development: because of renewed public interest in the case, the FBI told us it has located the original files on the Fronczak kidnapping and that agents are reviewing the information. The case has not been formally reopened, but Paul and his family are hopeful that with new technology, the FBI should be able to do today what it could not do 49 years ago.
I mean, there's still hope out here. There's people that we can talk to. Hopefully someone's going to come forward, and the more light we shine on this case, the more we have a chance of finding something.
If the FBI decides to formally reopen the case, we, of course, will let you know. In the meantime, our colleagues from CBS News have taken a major interest in Paul's story. A crew from CBS this morning has been in town the past 2 days and will be airing their own story Monday morning to give it the broadest platform it has had to date. As mentioned previously, we do plan to keep plugging away to help the Fronczaks get some answers, and we'll, of course, keep you updated.
Yeah.
Good going, George.
What a story.
Yeah, it really is.
Thanks, George.
A dual mystery that has persisted for nearly a half a century is a few steps closer to being solved.
We've learned that the FBI has reopened the Paul Fronzak kidnapping case, a story that made national headlines way back in 1964, and again this year, following exclusive stories by the I-Team. George Knapp is here with an update.
Well, as you both know, the FBI, as a matter of policy, will not confirm or deny the existence of an investigation, so the Bureau will not comment on this on the record. But we have learned that the Chicago office of the FBI has fired up its investigation of a mind-boggling mystery involving a Henderson man. Paul Fronzak is the man who no longer knows who he is. He thought he was the son of a Chicago couple who lost their baby to a kidnapper in 1964, but a DNA test confirmed the shocking truth. He isn't a Fronczak after all. Since we first reported this strange story earlier this year, media interest has exploded and tips have poured in from the public. Progress is being made towards solving the dual mysteries.
What is that?
This is a DNA kit.
A Band-Aid?
Kind of.
The Fronczaks are now more than familiar with DNA testing. Paul Fronzak has taken at least 5 tests so far, including the most recent one at the request of 2 Chicago FBI agents who visited his home 2 weeks ago. A home DNA test taken last year is how he learned the shocking news that he isn't the person he thought he was.
That's a lot to absorb.
It was. I'm I was actually at work when I got the results, and for like the next hour, I was kind of sitting there just staring at my desk.
The confusion began in April 1964 when a woman dressed as a nurse walked into a Chicago hospital and walked out with newborn Paul Fronzak, son of Chester and Dora Fronczak. The kidnapping set off a nationwide manhunt and media frenzy. More than a year later, the FBI focused its attention on a child found abandoned in New Jersey and given the name Scott McKinley. Agents tested his blood and skin and thought his ears were similar to the missing Fronczak baby. They couldn't quite say Scott was the missing Paul, but couldn't rule it out either. Paul was adopted by the Fronczaks and grew up believing he was their son. That is, until that first DNA test last year. Since our first I-Team report months ago, the story has generated worldwide media attention, but still no solution to the dual mysteries. Where is Paul and where is Scott's blood family? Paul says he's thrilled by the FBI decision to reopen the case, but in the meantime has been pursuing his own investigation with the help of the world's largest genealogy company, Ancestry.com.
The single biggest reason why people come in and take a DNA test is they want to understand their past. And so the ethnicity test, whether you're into family history deeply or not, is a great way to get started to say, hey, where my ancestors come from?
Ancestry.com of Provo has an astounding database, 11 billion public records, 5 billion names, 40 million family trees, and every day an army of researchers ingests a library's worth of paper. From the Honolulu phone book to 100-year-old London newspapers, millions of people have used the service to track down their family tree.
With the paper records, they get to what we call a brick wall, right, where they can't go any further. And the DNA has been really amazing at connecting you to another living individual, another third cousin, fourth cousin.
The company added DNA testing a few years ago and now has the world's most extensive DNA database. Each DNA test looks at 700,000 markers that allow for comparisons to DNA samples from all over the world. They can help customers identify where their ancestors are from, but also learn the names of existing blood relatives.
On average, our customers are finding 20 to 30 fourth cousins right off the bat because our database is so big.
He emphasizes, though, the company is not a detective agency. It doesn't do paternity tests, drug screens, or arrange for family reunions. Paul Fronzak says the DNA test he provided has already turned up tantalizing results. The name of a third cousin to Scott McKinley, and a surprise, too. His ethnicity is European, as he suspected, but he recently learned he's part Jewish.
It's a unique story in one sense. It's very common in another, and it's common in the fact that, as I said earlier, everyone wants to know where they came from and you know what their ancestry is.
Paul Fronzak is hoping to get answers not only for himself and his family, but also for the kindly couple who raised him and who will always be his parents.
And if we can get an answer for them, that'd be the best gift I could give them. You know, I mean, it's a sad thing to tell them, but it could be a great thing in the end.
We've learned that a massive pile of files on the kidnapping case has been retrieved by the FBI and is under review in Chicago. We also know the Las Vegas FBI office is participating. Again, though, the FBI will not comment on this on the record. The discovery of Paul's third cousin is promising, but it's not a lock because typically each of us has a few thousand third cousins, and a few of us keep in touch with all of them. If or when contact is made with Paul's blood relatives, we will keep you informed. In the meantime, we still have that webpage devoted to this case if you'd like to post comments or tips of your own, and we'll keep you on top of it.
Really fascinating because, like you said, we all want to find that root.
Oh, this operation was amazing, how much stuff they've got in it.
It really is.
The numbers are incredible.
Yeah.
This story just gives me the chills.
Thanks, George.
Wild.
Sure.